Hello, and welcome to a podcast about creating experimental art in trauma-informed and sustainable ways that support artists, our communities, and the organization as a whole. I'm your host, Molly, and you're listening to Any Other Anythings. In this season, we are focused on the latest project being produced by Graybox Collective. It is titled Positive Ruminations. So this is an event that will feature 4 new works, and each episode of this season of Any Other Anythings will feature conversations from the creative teams developing the new work. And we are really focusing on capturing the process and sharing out the things we find interesting along the way. Hope that you enjoy the season of Any Other Anythings. All right, hey all. So welcome back to another episode of Any Other Anything. So in this episode, we have the final recorded podcast of the pause rehearsal process. So we've got Jennifer, Jasmin, and Ree talking about that journey. And similar to the other rehearsals that we've had and that you've heard in the previous episodes, like these last rehearsals were really making like epic strides. So there's a lot of energy, I think, in the space. And so I hope you enjoy this final installment of Pause's creative process. We have finished the last Pause rehearsal. Who wants to summarize today's rehearsal?
Started off with my fabric getting stuck in a tree outside and frustration with tossing our fabric. But I feel like through it all, it kind of resonates as to what we're trying to accomplish as the piece on a whole of grief and what happens transitionally as an individual.
I really liked the feeling of not being limited. I liked having that choice.
Can you just say like a few more sentences?
Yeah, so like in the beginning, like how the exercise was to go outside where there really is no limit because it's the sky and maybe beyond that, but inside there's the ceiling that kind of restricts you and you either hit it and it comes back down, but outside if you hit a said ceiling, it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. Which is funny because the only thing that got hit was the tree. But the rest of the rehearsal was also us trying to remember the sequence of events that we have arranged on Post-it notes, which was mentally probably the most challenging way for me to try to remember choreography, but it was good. And then we talked through it multiple times and talked and walked and talked and walked and tried to remember the order. And then we just did it. And then some things happened and some things didn't.
Which I think really lends itself to where we are in that moment of what's going on and what's happening. So I think it sets us up beautifully for the piece, even if we're like, I can't remember what's on the 17th Post-it. It's okay.
But I think there was more of like an emotional connection when we didn't have to talk about it and we were just trying to move through it, even if we were like, we all have no idea what's next and we're just gonna stand here for a minute until someone does something.
And then I handed over the fabric. I was like, we're doing this.
It's a very like, make a choice. Jasmin is now leaving.
Well, we all kind of took turns too with like who started what, and then everyone kind of followed it.
But then it was interesting because your choice, I was like, okay, cool, now we're gonna do the big lean part. And then I was like, oh, you're not there. And then I was like, cool, we're doing a totally different section. Awesome. Flex in the moment. We're all on different pages, just like grief.
Yes. So thinking about grief and just kind of the arc of this piece and the development of it, what's maybe like a discovery or a reframe or some kind of takeaway around the content being grief that you've discovered in the process of developing this piece, especially I think with the fabric?
That's a loaded question.
I know it is.
Can you rephrase it?
Maybe. What have you discovered about grief in this process?
Okay. That what one person's makes sense of clarity-wise is maybe not the same for the next person. And I know that like everybody processes all of it different. But what I would presume as like, yeah, everybody looks at it this way. they don't. And I really learned that with your cloud outside and tossing the fabric. I was like, oh, we all don't like having no limits or having limits in certain capacities of things.
Yeah, that resonates.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't get my grief to fold over my body when I throw this up in the air as a piece of fabric the way that Jen's grief magically lands on her head. And I was so frustrated because I feel like when you taught us how to do it, it's like, okay, got it. And then you're like, fly higher, go free. And I was like, it's not working. I can't make it work. And so it feels apt as a metaphor. But then also the fabric, I think, is a metaphor. Anytime there's like something that you can translate the idea onto, I feel like it's a little bit easier to convey to the audience and to embrace as the dancer. Yeah.
I think through the exploration of playing with the fabric, we discovered differences amongst us and similarities of the griefs, the frustration, the comfortableness, the coziness of it, the handing it over, taking it back,
even with like the weight sharing of it, like the frustration.
Yeah, for me it really kind of exemplifies the fact that even though it's so totally different and individualistic for each person, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of commonality for it with us. And I think that is where we really connect in this piece and focus on as a unit, which I think is just an absolute metaphor for grief.
Anything else that you'd like to just capture in this last moment regarding the development process, or thinking about someone who's going to be walking in on this piece in 5-ish days? 5 days, yep.
I think people are gonna watch it and not. I think it's going to be a piece that resonates with individuals long after they've left the space. I think they're going to think about it. I think it's going to linger, and I think more points are going to connect later on for them, and they're going to have aha moments, and they're going to have those moments that they didn't quite hit them when they watched it, but it's stored in there somewhere, or something else is going to happen later that's going to refer back. And I think the dots will be connected. I think this is a piece that will linger and last with individuals for a while.
Well said.
Yeah.
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 I agree. Yeah.
Cool. That's actually like kind of common in gray box shows. People later, like months down the road, are like, why am I still thinking about that? Like that's what we do. So much for taking the time and energy to check out another episode of Any Other Anythings. Greatly appreciate your presence. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to find out more about this podcast, the speakers, and Graybox Collective. You can also go to grayboxcollective.com/podcast for a full transcript of this episode. Thank you again for listening. Thank you again for being here. Greatly appreciate it. Take care of yourselves and each other.